Vitamin C, as said by many social media health-related advertisements, cures the common cold. Well, vitamin C itself is a nutrient needed to form blood vessels, cartilage, and muscle in bones. It is not found in you, but instead has to be consumed to be introduced into your body. It can reduce your chances of getting some types of cancer and eye diseases, yes, but no, not the common cold. It might help reduce the length of the cold by a day or two, but not much more. Very surprising, as of course, social media influencers with no background in science are leaders of innovating remedies for colds. The common cold? Guess what else is cold? Antarctica. It is very cold, in fact, the place with the coldest average temperature being Dome Argus, situated on a mountaintop in the middle of the continent. The snow, ice, the howling wind, the barren landscape makes it one of the least friendly places in the world, baring its snarling teeth like a crazed dog. I can only picture Antarctica as a rabid version of a chihuahua from that Taco Bell commercial in the early 90s after that analogy now. But yet, we as humans have treated it like a frontier, exploring, mapping, and building huts and houses to leave our mark on Antarctica. We as humans need to explore the tallest peaks, the bottoms of the oceans. We need to push ourselves to the limit of what we can do, grab that extra bag of Cheetos. Antarctica is a perfect example of that. Nowadays, 4,000 people plus live in Antarctica during the summer, 1,000 plus staying over the winter, with 66 bases and 12 nations taking part. But back in the exploration days, back in the early 20th century, from 1901 to 1911 or so, the pioneers, the expeditioners, people coming to Antarctica would be there for either the glory or the scientific research, and would be fierce, driven, and tough people. They would survive these brutal conditions for the sake of science and furtherment of what the humankind can do. These people, of course, needed shelter, and so made a crafting table. That joke was really bad. / made elementary huts out of stone and timber. These huts, set to last against the stone ice, were an interesting insight in the mind and needs of these early explorers. In this video, I want to investigate how they built these huts, what they were used for, and their lasting impact as an artifact on the early exploration of Antarctica. This is the rotting huts of Antarctica. Before we go on, this video took about 20 hours of work, so if you could summon like, that would be awesome. Also, CB8 asked me for a shoutout, so shoutout to CB8 and thank you. Anyways, on with the video. The first hut is Laurie's Hut, which is situated on an island of 33 square miles, a part of the South Orkney Islands. The sovereignty of the island is still being debated, as Argentina and the United Kingdom have both claimed it, even though Argentina claimed it first. It was found in a 1821 expedition by George Powell and Nathaniel Palmer. The hut was built by William Bruce in 1903 as a home or temporary resting point for expeditionists. Ormond Hut, as it was named, the namesake being Robert Ormond, was made out of 100 tons of disc-shaped rocks dragged on sledges from a glacier mine nearby. They then added a wood roof with a window right under it. The creators sold it to the Argentinian government for 5,000 pesos, or $7,765 today, which they then used for a housing and base of operations for scientific experiments. It is the oldest permanent settlement in Antarctica, seeing as today it still houses people, with there now being 11 buildings divided into researching things such as continental glaciology, seismology, sea ice zone, and sea ice zone glaciology. An interesting fact about the area is that the first post office in all of Antarctica was built on Laurie Island in 1904, which is a very random progression as it jumps from hut to post office in a year. It's most likely because the Argentinian government official was dared to only say post office for 10 pesos, and it was just happened that that day was the day that they were deciding what to build next on Laurie Island. The next hut is Pauley's hut, which is situated on Pauley Island, which is a circular island 1 mile in diameter that is heated by a volcano which has been active within the last 1,000 years in a geothermal system that keeps the island ice-free. Discovered in an 1839 expedition by James Clark Rose, named the island after Right Honourable Gentleman, British Dude, Royal Navy Admiral, Captain, Companion of the Bath Officer, Lord George Pauley. A, quote, 3-masted whaling vessel with auxiliary steam power was crushed by the ice of the Weddell Sea and sank. That ship was the Antarctic, that in February 1903, trying to reach the Snow Island, hit some ice and went down. It was being captained by C.A. Larsen, who was a Norwegian sailor who is most famous for finding fossils in Antarctica first. A crew of 20 from nearly 25 kilometers or 15 miles away were able to find their way all the way to Pauley Island. They only had a small battered tent, and so they built a hut out of stone further inland. It was a 22 by 34-foot hut made out of flat stones. There were 2 20-foot wide beds that could each hold 10 men. They were able to live off the eggs that they scourged from the penguins and the unusually colored water from the lake nearby. The hut was dirty and smelled like rotting penguins and blubber. In November, Larsen and 5 others left in a whaleboat to try and find the other parties that had landed on Snow Hill and Hope Bay. Finding that they were well with a rescue boat from Uruguay helping them home, they boarded the rescue boat and went back to Buenos Aires. Despite their stranding, they were able to learn a lot about Antarctica and were able to study the geography of the Antarctic Peninsula. And they got pretty good at charades. Today, the ruins still stand along with the grave of a fallen crewmate. Next up is Scott's Hut, which is a building located on the north side of Ross Island, the namesake being James Clerk Ross, whom you might remember from earlier being the discoverer of Pauley Island. It is an island of 950 square miles, an island that is right off mainland Antarctica, formed by 4 volcanoes. Scott's Hut was created in 1911 by the crew of the Terra Nova expedition, led by Robert F. Scott. It was already prefabricated in England before they went to Antarctica. At 50 by 25 feet, it was larger than the others mentioned, as it was designed to hold a population of up to 30. The insulation was made out of seaweed. The lighting made out of Acelyte and light lanterns. Must have smelt like a fish's shoe because of the seaweed. A stable was attached to the building for their ponies. A 40 by 12-foot utility room was added too. It was used in the winter of 1911 when 25 people of the Terra Nova party lived there. This was the launching point from where Scott and his men tried to hike to the South Pole, a fatal trick. It was later used in the 1915-17 expedition by several of Shackleton's Ross Sea party. It was then abandoned, but when found, it was in great condition except for the decaying of food and the suggested decaying of the plagued roof. But the more interesting aspect of the hut is its purpose, in being the launching point for Scott's famous mission to the South Pole. On October 24th, 1911, Robert Scott and 11 others started off on dog leads, ponies, and motor sledges. It all went terribly, the motors breaking down, the ponies having to be shot, the dogs being returned. When they got all the way to the pole, only 5 people remained, and finding evidence that Roald and Mundinson had gotten there a month earlier, they were disheartened. Going back, the weather was atrocious. 2 others died, by the time that they got within 11 miles of the supply depot tent. Robert's final journey entry being Every day we have been ready to start for our depot, 11 miles away, but outside the door of the tent it remains a scene of whirling drift. We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker, of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more. Robert and his companions died in their tent, side by side. They were found 8 months later, where his diary and other artifacts were found. He became a hero for Britain, and was revered for his pursuit of scientific glory and furthering of the progress towards the Antarctic frontier. Shackleton's hut, a 33 by 19 foot hut, was prefabricated, robust, and timber, with lodging for the humans, stables for ponies, doghouses, and motor sled garages for the transportation the expedition members were taking. It is situated on Cape Royds, a dark rock cape on Ross Island. Shackleton and his own bed, while the others shared 2-man cubicles. George Marstone, an artist along with them, drew paintings of Joan of Arc and Napoleon while there. Off to the other sides were a biological lab and a photographic darkroom, which for all of us who have no idea what that is, it's a place that prints out pictures, I think. I haven't highlighted the conservation efforts to keep these buildings in authentic form, but here it is for the Shackleton hut. In January 2010, a 100-year-old beer was found buried in the ice in the house. It was Shackleton's beer. Between 2004 and the restoration project by the Ross Sea Restoration Project occurred, trying to put it in a better condition. Now the Antarctic Heritage Hut has preserved and 2 other huts, including the previously included Scott's Hut, for the last 10 years. It has sunk $17 million into preserving these huts, and has a plan to keep on doing it for the next 25 years. 62 specialists from 12 countries have worked on the project. They've tried to weatherproof and preserve the artifacts, totaling about 18,200 artifacts from all 3 sites. These projects have helped bring the past into the future, and help us get a better understanding of the conditions these people went through. These huts, while small and beaten, weave a story 100 years old, exemplifying the past in a preserved and visible way. These explorers, with their minds set on the fruits of life, built these houses as a stepping stone to their goals and desires, and to what they so desire. These huts, these artifacts, these wonderful and beautiful acts of history, these tangible representations of what people would call history, people who are long since dead, and achievements that are basking in gold and glamour. These huts are not as famous as the people that inhabited them, but they are an interesting look into their lives and mindsets. It's wonderful to think that somewhere on a specific coordinate in a cold climate of Antarctica sits the huts of the explorers of the past. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Thank you so very much for watching. Like if you want, and see ya.